Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha.
All right. Well, I think we're all set. Good to be with everybody one more time on a Wednesday evening as we engage in these teachings on the whole graduate path to enlightenment. We're in the area of the six perfections, and we've covered generosity. We just said this refuge prayer, it has all six: generosity, ethics, patience, joyous effort. And now we're on concentration. So last week we did an introduction, a discussion into this perfection. And there's a big bandwidth here. Everything from being able to pay attention for a few minutes to achieving shamatha, the capacity to sustain, for days at attention, without losing that ability, without losing the object. So we're probably somewhere in between there. And as I mentioned last week, is all of these are intertwined, right? The more ethical we are, the easier it is to meditate. When I'm doing things I don't feel good about, going to have some issues in my meditation. The more I'm able to concentrate and be present, the more ability I have for good choices. I can remember what would be a healthy choice. I might remember what happened to me the last time I did this thing. Instead of the mind saying, yeah, it'll be good this time. Don't worry about it. And I forget. So mindfulness being a state of non-forgetfulness. Sati is a state of non-forgetfulness. It means that when I place my attention on an object, I can remember it's there. I don't lose it. It has the capacity also of bearing in mind, like I can bear in mind. I don't forget. Made an appointment and I can remember there is an appointment coming up. I can bear in mind, what these virtues are that I'd like to embody. I can have them be a part of my decision-making process. So it's really this capacity that we can develop to know what we're doing, why we're doing it, whether or not it's helpful or not, beneficial, whether it's based in reality or not. We have some introspection in terms of how we're attending to something, and the capacity to bring another reflection, another perspective, or investigate. Have some real choice based in reality and the capacity to follow through with choices we'll feel good about tomorrow. Sounds pretty good. And then we go into our day, and how many times have we made a conscious decision like that throughout the whole day? We do so much on autopilot, and we don't even ask ourselves why we're doing what we're doing. We didn't even know, because when you're meditating, you'll notice your mind had gone on a whole thing. You didn't give it permission. You didn't remember that your mind left the breath, right? That's the thing that caught my attention, is that you'll never remember leaving the breath, or you'd still be on the breath. But somewhere down the road, you catch your mind off into something, and that whole time's unawareness. It just takes over. Not much free will there. Yeah, Phil. Microphone. Laura. Yeah.
Thank you. John, I was noticing this last session a few minutes ago, and often that I'll be meditating, focus on my breath, counting breaths, and I'll have thoughts that will flash by me. And I'm sometimes fighting or trying to stay on the breath while this thought is passing by. And usually I can keep counting and keep going, but these thoughts are just, I'm seeing them partially in a way. And I'm wondering if you have any thoughts about how to approach that.
Well, One is acceptance. We don't want to fight them, but we are choosing to keep our anchor here. And so that's still what we call, so there's, very subtle attention, and there's what we call sort of gross attention. And gross attention means I haven't lost the breath, even though my mind's having some activity. And you may notice that's what's happening. Sometimes I can have this activity, but I still have my anchor in the breath. I'm still aware. So it's not one or the other. It's this mixture. And that happens quite frequently. And it's good because you still have the anchor. You still have your toe on the breath there, right? You have your toe in it and your mind's going out here, but I'm still aware. And so just noticing that is all wonderful. You're aware. You're aware that thoughts are coming. You're aware of the counting and the breath. And all that's being aware of what you're doing. That's mindful. You know where your attention is. And so just acceptance rather than fighting that, and just releasing the thoughts as you can. But sometimes your mind's not going to let you let go of those thoughts. And that's totally okay. Totally okay. Totally okay. We never measure our practice by how focused we are in a session. We measure by, did we follow the directions? And some days it'll be a chaotic mess. And other days it'll be like, wow, sweet. Most somewhere in between. But I often find, and I've mentioned this many times, that I think the most valuable practices are when my mind and body does not want to meditate. And it is just, and I sit anyway. I'm just letting my mind know, nah, we're here to train you. We're not here to have you train me. And I'll sit, 2-3 breaths, 2-3 breaths, body's like, come on, man, is this thing over? And we just started, and I sit till the bell goes. And what I let my mind know is this is valuable, this is important, this is what we're doing. And so we're training the mind in that way. But yeah, there'll be thoughts that come. Sometimes, like, you're still aware of the counting of the breath. That's very good. Often we'll be off. Yeah. Not even aware of it. Come back.
Would you say then we're cultivating subtle attention when we're focused on the breath and another thought is not coming past?
Yeah, it's more subtle is when you're just, the level of awareness is just fused with the object. You'll be fused with the object of your attention. And the next part of this book is going to kind of get into these things that pop up and how to deal with them. But I always just find that acceptance is very helpful, of not trying to shape my practice. That's where we get in trouble. We notice things and we apply an antidote to those distractions. And so, just having the opportunity, if we can let go, we can let go. So let's see what the book has to say. So I think that's the next piece here, some of the common obstacles or distractions. So they're pointing out, and we talked last week about having a consistent practice. Sitting in a particular way is helpful. And so if you take a different posture every time, it's a little more challenging. But if you sit in a chair and, when you sit in a chair, sit up straight, 2 feet on the ground, hands in a particular posture, could be on the lap, could be, looking cool like this, could be the, left hand, right hand, thumbs together, whatever that is that we do, just do it the same way. Because if you sit the same way in the chair or cushion or wherever we are, and we sit with a nice back, straight back, and as soon as you get in that posture, you're letting your mind know we're here to meditate. That's what we're doing. So you're just repeating that. So consistency around that's very nice. Doesn't mean if you're in a different, like I remember I used to sit like this all the time, and I damaged my knee in a retreat in Thailand. We were there for weeks, and I couldn't sit like this. I had to sit in a chair. And I wasn't used to sitting in a chair. It was kind of a thing. But it works. You sit in a chair. And so we just, wherever we are is good. But if you can, keep a consistent posture. That's helpful. And a consistent practice daily. Even start with short. So you left off here on a daily basis, one or more short sessions of meditation. Doing so will bring many benefits, such as a calmer mind, improved concentration. The meditation here provides simple instructions to get you started. So, I worked with some people, just 5 minutes. I actually had this one guy told me he's up to 3 minutes, man. And because his mind was just so active, and then 3 minutes, then 5, But you do it throughout the day. So do it throughout the day. And then, but as I mentioned last week, if you can get past 20, if you get we try to train 24 minutes, that's significant. That has an impact. But if we do 10 minutes daily, that will have an impact. It'll get you rolling, especially 10 minutes a couple times a day, then 20, 24, or something like that. And that can offset a lot of damage from all the multitasking of the mind. So a lot of benefits: calmer mind, improved concentration, and we'll notice when our mind wanders quicker. So we have a choice. So here's the advice. You need to choose an object that you use consistently in your practice. Calm abiding will not develop if you switch objects every few sessions or days. Recommended objects include the breath, that's what we use, a visualized image of the Buddha, the nature of the mind. So that's a subtle shamatha practice, observing the mind itself, settling in the nature of the mind, and loving kindness. I've never heard that before. Yeah, loving kindness tends to be a contemplative meditation. She's calling me to tell me about that. So loving kindness, because you're generating something. So shamatha is generally, you want very little mental activity. You just want to rest. The breath is recommended for those with overly active minds, but there are many benefits to using a visualized image of the Buddha. Focusing on such an object purifies our negative karma, accumulates merit, creates the cause to attain the qualities of an enlightened being. Whichever object you choose, you need to keep your attention focused on that object as much as possible, and gently but firmly bring it back whenever it wanders away. And gently with ourselves, that's where the acceptance is. Gently with ourselves. A lot of shamatha practice, the object could be a rock or a twig. And the idea is, in those senses, it's not interesting. Like the breath is interesting for a few breaths, and then it's not very interesting anymore. Rock, a little bit, but then you just keep staring at it, or twig or something. So the yogi's back with Jetsuma's training, it's just an object, not very interesting. What will happen is that the awareness itself becomes interesting. The degree of awareness becomes very interesting. And so really want to do that rather than mental activity. Within the Gaelic tradition of the origin of these teachings, a lot of time they taught the monks and nuns to have an image of the Buddha and visualize that, which requires some effort. But the breath, it's always available. It's always with you. I think I should probably silence that, I think. Okay. So an object consistent breath is good. We tend to have active minds. Very helpful. Okay. Yeah, my pop-ups that way. Went too far. Okay, so we bring it back when it wanders away. There are some common problems or obstacles to look out for in your calm abiding practice. Laziness. We covered 3 kinds of laziness before, did we? Yeah, okay. There are different kinds of laziness, as we learned in the previous chapter on joyous effort. In the context of calm abiding, laziness refers to reluctance to meditate. When we first begin to meditate, we may be very enthusiastic, but then the practice gets difficult or the results do not happen as quickly as we wish. Our energy can evaporate, and we might feel even aversion for our meditation seat. Anybody notice that? Yeah, let's go meditate. Mind and body's going, come on, man. If this happens, contemplate the benefits of concentration explained above. This will reinforce our aspiration to attain calm abiding and our joyous effort to practice it. With continued practice, the results will start to appear. So this laziness, one of the big things is really reinvigorating our interest in the practice. Why is this beneficial? Anything that we're interested in, anything that we see benefit in, we get motivated. And so that's one of the big things to overcome laziness. And that's where I keep bringing up free will. I just don't think I've met anyone who wouldn't like some free will. Like what would it be to not be a prisoner of your thoughts, feelings, worries, fears, emotions, to not be imprisoned by them? What would it be like to be free of that? It's pretty inviting. Kind of motivates me to sit. And so that helps me overcome my laziness. Another, the thing to not meditate, there's lots of things that you can bring to mind. There's different tactics I've used. One is I sit there and I reflect on how much money I've paid, like to travel somewhere, to go to a meditation retreat, and to sit and meditate, get these teachings. And like I can do it for free right in front of my, altar. Different than getting the teaching, but just the meditation. I'm sitting going, I pay all this money where I'll just sit and meditate. And then for free, it's available. And right here, right now. And all that money was getting me to where I could do that at home. All that time, energy, and resources. It's like, and so I sit there and think, why would I waste all that? Like, this is wonderful. And so I'll think about that. Like being on retreat, I get to be on retreat in my room. I get to be here. Then, I'll sometimes bring to mind all my teachers, like they're in the room with me, sitting here with a bunch of Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, teachers. And that's helpful. Yeah, helpful to me. Yeah, the value of this opportunity. Because as soon as you bring them to mind, they're present. Everything I get to do is because of them. So really finding some ways to find value in the practice. That'll be one of the steps to overcome it. And for me, I think free will is that thing where in the day, you'll notice attachment arise. You'll notice compulsions arise. You'll notice things. And like you might notice that you noticed. And that is awesome. I noticed and I had a choice. Yeah. And then even better, maybe I acted on my choice like that. That's where the magic for me is. When I don't meditate, I don't have those choices. I don't, my mind's a prisoner. caught up in the impulses, the feelings, the sensations. And then a rationalizing mind that'll say, "Wow, it's okay. A little bit of this, that's all right. No problem." And then I'll look up one day and I'll be, "Man, you're over 60 years old. You're going to get enlightened in this lifetime." You're not going to do that sitting there eating cherry pie watching Netflix, man. That's not going to do it. Uh, you know, maybe make a better choice. So that's helpful. So really, laziness is it's actually related to, there's 5 hindrances. Let's go through these before I go on a whole. And you laugh because you don't think I'm going to make it through 5 of them, do you? Okay. Let's see what happens. So second one's forgetting the object. This happens when our mind gets distracted by thoughts, memories, emotions, sounds, and so on. And it's no longer paying attention to our meditation object. The remedy to this problem is mindfulness. In this context, mindfulness means remembering a familiar object and keeping it in mind. So whenever your mind forgets the meditation object, you need to bring it back to this object and try to keep it there as long as possible. Don't worry if you have to do this again and again, even every few seconds. That's normal in the beginning. And with regular, continuous practice, you will be able to keep your mind on the object for longer periods of time before it wanders away. From a few seconds to a minute, then a few minutes, and so on. And so that's just it drifting away, which is a little bit different than, because you're still aware and you're aware that thoughts are intruding. Here it totally drifts away. I forgot the object. I'm off in la la land, thinking about the jalapeno popcorn that I just ordered for my granddaughter's fundraiser. Stuff's pretty good. It's called jalapeno, Holl, jala, pino popcorn. What were we talking about? You don't like it? Neither does Laura. That's why I order it. Yeah. Get to eat it all. Yeah. No, she's usually not interested in that kind of popcorn. Yeah. So, excitement and restlessness. This is when your mind wanders to objects of attachment, such as pleasant experiences you had in the past, people you're attracted to, food and music you enjoy, and so forth. Remembering impermanence, death, and the unsatisfactory nature of samsara are helpful antidotes to attachment. Other remedies can be found on page 147 through 150. Counting your breath, as explained earlier in the meditation on the breath. It's also a good way to settle your mind. You can do this even if the main object of concentration is something other than the breath, such as an image of the Buddha. Temporarily put that object aside for a while. Count your breathing until your mind is more calm. Then return to your meditation object. So you can see how these are very subtly different. Like, the mind just drifts off, but it could also drift off to something you're excited about, looking forward to, sense pleasure. Other times there's just kind of dullness, laxity. I can't really remember the object. My mind's just kind of taking off, sort of laxity, dullness, drifting off. Yeah, let's do, I think they have 4. Yeah, laxity or sinking. This is a lack of clarity and vividness in the way the object appears to our mind. The problem is subjective rather than objective. The mind has become somewhat dull and withdrawn, causing the object to appear less sharp and clear. It can be remedied by making the object clear and brighter. or by imagining light within and around you. If that doesn't work, you can temporarily put aside your meditation object and complete and contemplate uplifting topics such as the preciousness of human life or the qualities of the Buddha. Having tried that, if your mind continues to be sluggish, take a short break and invigorate yourself. Do some stretches. Splash your face with some cool water. Get some fresh air. Then sit down and try it again. So these are all just sort of common things. And the main thing here is it's better to do a short practice well than a long practice with a lot of bad habits. So you're doing a longer practice, but you're honestly getting dull, or your mind's just off into a tangent the whole time. That it's better to have a 10-minute practice with good habits than an hour practice of just, bad habits. Tenzin Priyadarshi, he'll tell you if you're sleepy and stuff, don't meditate. Just take a walk. Go. Don't waste your time. You're just getting a bad habit. So the opportunity in all of these, the common theme is, can I remember how it's valuable? Can I remember the rarity of this opportunity? Can I see its value? Can I make it important? If it's important, I'm interested. And then often, we're very excited initially, and then it fades, and then it becomes this thing I have to do. And when it becomes this thing I have to do, that's a big challenge. Thing I gotta do. How about you give yourself a 5-minute break from all the nonsense? Sit down, meditate. We can do 5 minutes. So we can also beat ourselves up with thinking I should be doing more and only doing 5 minutes, really. Yeah, no, I'm doing 5 minutes, 5 more minutes than I would have done. Just this encouraging voice that says, this is valuable. It's important. It's meaningful. And the days that we're living in with so much distraction, so much competition for our attention, so much diffusion in our minds and our abilities to attend to things, so much instantaneous dopamine available and hijacked, so little ability to apply executive function to what's going on. I mean, I just think it's the most important medicine we can do. So I get inspired by that. I just think, well, if I don't do this, I'm giving up the ability to be a participant in my own life. Yeah, that's pretty grim. Scares me a little bit. Sort of. Yeah. Can you hand Shaw the microphone?
Yeah, I'm curious. I sort of have a similar experience to Phil where a lot of things kind of filter through, and often it's the world around me, like the sounds or whatever it may be that's going on. And sometimes it actually helps to have that kind of background second thing going on. But I
Help
don't know
you
if
focus
that's,
more.
yeah, and I don't know if that's good or bad, or I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I actually think it's pretty good. I notice, when there's noise or distraction in the area, it'll help me dial in and focus a little harder. It's if someone were going to achieve shamatha, like go through all levels, like real advanced, where you're there for hours and you're doing 15 hours a day, and you need quiet. Okay, but for our practices, the ability to be in some noise environment and to be able to direct the attention, we would prefer quiet, but as noises arise, to not let it bother you and dial in a little bit better is valuable. Every time, I hear something like that, I think about the training in Thailand, where we're all there and, meditate around this thing, and all the landscapers come with all the whoa, and all the noise and the mowers and stuff, and I just watched half the room got agitated, and like the whole point is, we're here to meditate, but and then there's stories in Buddhism about the yogi, who's meditating and is calm, and these people come to ask him questions. They're irritating him, they're bugging him. He gets angry, and they say, "Well, how's your practice? If you're getting angry, I can only be peaceful if it's quiet. I can only be peaceful if nobody's by." Like, it doesn't work very well. So, having some background stuff. Now, what I would avoid is what people fall into a trap is like the waterfall noise, like the soft, soothing stuff. And then they kind of get addicted and can't meditate without it. Rather than, I'm in quiet because we want quiet. But noises come, people enter, it doesn't bother, just focus more. In the monastery I lived in India, it's loud. There's no quiet, Everybody thinks a monastery is some quiet spot. It was a Zen monastery, probably, but not a Tibetan Gelug monastery. They're in debate. They're doing prayers out loud. There's just voices all the time. It's active. And even at night, they're on rooftops doing their prayers, their recitations, and, so it's noisy all the time. And, but rich, like spiritual, it's like, prayers, and chants, it has a beautiful thing. And if you watch the monks, especially when they come here and they're doing like the salmon doll and stuff, they're working on a salmon doll. People are all around them and they're looking and talking, like they're just dialed. They're just dialed, nothing's gonna phase them. Yeah. So there's some wonderful ability to be able to focus with some of that. But we do, if we can, want to see if we can get a little quiet. Our mind's not used to quiet very often, so it's helpful. Yeah. Let's see. Another essential quality in common buying practice is introspection or vigilance. So that's what I was hoping to get to. Companion of mindfulness. This mental factor enables us to recognize faults that arise in our meditation, such as forgetfulness and excitement, and to apply the appropriate antidotes. It can be compared to a security guard in a bank whose job is to look out for trouble and deal with it as efficiently as possible. So introspection is there's a monitoring. Monitors kind of notice that your mind is wired. So mindfulness, your mind's on with the objects. I'm mindful. I know what I'm attending to. I'm mindful. Introspection is noting that you're not mindful. Introspection is knowing, there's John again off, doing whatever he's doing. And wait a minute. So that introspection, so there's a monitoring taking place, that mental factor. Mindfulness, we know what we're doing. Introspection is catching you so you can come back. So these two things working together, which is what you're noticing, right? When you're noticing thoughts and you're noticing this. So you have some introspection there. And then we have the opportunity to bring it back. And the big challenge here is that people want to get somewhere when they meditate. And you just got to let go of all that. Abandon all hope and fear. I'm not here to, I'm just here to follow the directions. Mine might be, just a mess of chaos. Noises might come, might be quiet. But if I'm trying to achieve something when I sit down, then, like a certain mental state or a certain level of concentration, I'm already done. It's another attachment. It's another thing that's going to be an obstacle. So we just let go of that. We stay out of the results and we focus on the practice. Follow the directions. Apply the directions. And the big antidotes here to all of this is interest and value. If I have value in the practice, if I see how it's benefiting my life and I can relate it to this practice, then, it's kind of like brushing your teeth, right? It's like, I don't want cavities, I go to the dentist, because I don't want cavities. I don't go to the dentist because it's fun, and I'd like to not lose my life. I'd like to have some choice. Yeah, the dentist story is kind of interesting. We didn't have really money. My mom raising 9 kids, a bunch of chaos in my house. And I went to the dentist once when I was a little kid. I think I was, I don't know, maybe 5 or something. It was not a good experience. Dentist wound up hitting me. I bit his finger like 3 times. I wasn't trying to bite his finger in my defense, but, anyway, he got upset, kind of whacked me. It probably wasn't that hard. But anyway, I jumped out of the chair. I'm running. My family's chasing me. They're trying to corral me. My little brother comes under the table, tackled my feet. It was not very helpful. It wasn't a pleasant experience. So anyway, most of my life I've never gone to a dentist, and I changed my life, found recovery. I've got a job, and I've got teeth pain. I've got pain, and so I asked, go to a dentist. I got a recommendation. I go there, and they asked me, when's the last time I went to a dentist? I said, I don't know, when I was 5 or 6. She's like blown away. She goes, well, what brought you in here? And I just thought that was the most insane question. Like, what brought you here? Well, pain. Like, why else would anyone go to a dentist, right? Pain. And anyway, long story short, the lesson that was given to me was if I went regularly, I wouldn't have the pain. And so after they did all the work and all that, I've been pretty regular going to the dentist most of my life. And I haven't had that pain. Meditation is likewise. You want to not have mental and emotional suffering, not be a prisoner of every thought, worry, and fear that arises, not have a bunch of regrettable emotional events and upheavals. Well, how about we give ourselves a choice about that? I mean, to me, that sounds pretty cool. But our minds are so conditioned that we can not want any of that emotional drama or pain or stuff. But, I don't actually want to do the work that would eliminate it, because it's delayed, right? It's not instant. It's something that you only notice after you've done it for a while. So that whole executive function needs to be in place. We need to recognize over the period of time. So like we don't judge a practice by a session. We do judge our practice over doing it for 3 months. So I do it every day for 3 months, and you check in and you go, hey, am I less reactive? Am I more resilient? Am I more capable of attending to things? And you start to go, oh yeah, I'm better at this. A little more free will, a little more choice. Well, then, now we know it's working. But if we don't relate it to that, and what happens is we don't because there's a delayed result. What we tend to do as humans, just over the years I've been noticing, is get really good at it for a while, enjoy the benefits, and then slack off. And then things get difficult again. And then we go, man, I need to do that again. And so we jump back on it. And that's just normal. I mean, I've experienced that much of my life. So the key is, how do I keep myself, motivated? And I think, the pithy advice that has helped me so much is to see the value in a 5-minute practice, see the value in a 10-minute practice. Not sit there and think, if I'm not sitting for this period of time, I'm not meditating today. No, you know what? I can sit for 5 minutes. Sit outside 5 minutes. That shows there's value. And having that opportunity to see, it's not about getting to some point. It's about seeing the value in training our attention and the self-worth of developing the ability to choose. And that's incredible. It's incredible to have this whole thing, mind, body just screaming at you in some way, emotionally, mentally, or distress, and know that none of that is you. Like, and it's temporary, and I don't need to fight it, and I have a choice. And that's a treasure. And we can all get there. I mean, I remember, 10 minutes a day, 1999. It felt like an hour, man. When is this thing going to be over? 10 minutes? Like, come on, ouch. And, but incrementally over time, we have the ability to feel, experience, bring perspective, and have a choice. Without stuffing feelings, without negating them, just knowing that they are what you are experiencing and their information. Yeah. So that sounds helpful. I want to do the practice. So just a little bit every day. Do multiple times. It's good. So anybody else have any questions, thoughts, curiosities? So far, we only have the in-house crew here. Need somebody to give me a break? Let me sip my water. I'll elaborate on these 4 things that was brought up in this text. But there's 5 hindrances to our spiritual practice. It's called the 5 hindrances. And the 5 hindrances, these are the things that block us from any real progress. Shamatha practice, if you were to achieve it, eliminates all 5. I mean, they just don't show up anymore. And first one is our normal craving, desire, attachment to sense pleasures, right? Sounds, noise, taste, food, physical activity, sexual stuff, biking. Our attachments to it, our hobbies, the things we do, right? That, sometimes it will prevent us from engaging like in practices that are going to support us in a bigger picture. And we don't have a balance, right? So there's a difference between, and Jacob and I were talking about that, the difference between attachment and appreciation, right? I can appreciate my hobbies. I can appreciate the things I get to do. I can see the value in them, which is different than a need to do them, right? The need, that desire, that craving. So craving that pops up. So that happens all the time, right? That craving, that impulse. We get a sensation in the body. And the next thing you know, it's like all we can think about is doing that. So that's a huge obstacle. Yeah. Microphone. And then,
Maybe this isn't exactly that, but I find that, for instance, exercise is almost requisite to being able to have a good practice for me.
mm-hmm.
Because if I don't exercise, I don't sleep, and then I can't focus.
Yeah, taking care of this body is important, right? We have a rare and precious human bird. Very important to take care of this body. And so, if you look at any medical advice, if you're not exercising, if you're not active, right, we're not going to have much balance. So we can't do much practice. We can't do a lot. So, again, healthy exercise that's meaningful, that's conducive to practice, as opposed to hanging out at the gym, and hitting the steroids, chaos that some people get caught up into, and that becomes the identity. Then we're caught up in that. But healthy exercise, balance with that. It's interesting. One of the monks at the monastery is bringing in these new Western ideas about exercise with the monks, and every now and then, yeah, you get the monks out there. They got their tennies doing some jogging and stuff, and other ones are like, "Really, what are you doing?" Because it wasn't in their practice, except the yogas that they do, which is really physical. But their life is exercise. Like, everything's manual. We only have stairs. There's no elevators. Everything's hand tools. Everything's lift and carry. Like, they're just, their daily life is physical at the monastery I lived at. And so they're in pretty good shape, most of them. So it's important. Yeah. We should try exercise, right, Laura? Yeah, wake up, she's on the bike, doing the deal. Yeah. I just laugh at myself because, I used to be kind of a bit carried away in that area. Are you going to say something right now?
I'm just thinking about, as we refine our practice, we also refine sort of the kind of exercise and how much and when. And, I'm so grateful to be privy to some of the yogis at CCR and this, what they're learning about how to refine and integrate a real fine balance. And then the instruction of Lama Allen to, at that stage, when you're in long-term retreat, to not do vigorous exercise, but that it starts to tone down and be balanced along with your practice. So it's an interesting journey, I mean, speaking from being an old skydiver and whitewater kayaker, I don't need that anymore. But I now, and as we age, how that changes, and as we integrate it more with our practice. So yeah, I just think it's an interesting journey and to check in where we're at and what we need at that point. So yeah, it's not always the same.
Yep. I was just saying, this old guy used to have a project where I took my high school students to senior living. And this one group, this one building that we share stories with, the high school kids. They'd hear stories about coming over during World War I, ships, like all this history. And so they all got into it. It was really nice, invigorated. The older people loved having the high school kids there. But this crew was very unique. They're between 80 and 100. And they had won the senior Olympics in their little division. They're pretty active. This one old guy, he says, "Yeah, you stop moving, you die." And he made sure he kept moving. We have that one woman who's always walking, right? From what she's at Sopris, right? Rain, snow, doesn't matter, man. We see her just cruising the streets, and so yeah, important to take our bodies, but as you point out, at the level that's appropriate, meaningful. And then again, the levels of practice change. A yogi that can sit for days at a time without moving is kind of a very different body than I have. that can live on just a little water and this little mineral powder for weeks. Like that, that's a different body. Or breathless state, or they can live for a week or two without breathing. Like, again, different body. Yeah, I don't have any of those. I need to do some push-ups. That's my little exercise addiction. A healthy choice, balanced. Yeah. Yeah, but that's the key to all this, though, is balance, right? And the difference between impulse control, attachment is, there's this sort of need, this edge for something. Whereas we can feel that edge, that impulse, that desire, and know that if there's no time for that today or something, that it's okay, it's still important. I can do it tomorrow. And so all day long, if you notice the impulses, that when we get, wow, I'm only on 1 of 5, right? What were you talking about? But the impulses as they arise throughout the day, just watch how much conditioning in the mind-body system. And we also don't recognize that it changes. What I used to need, later I don't need. And what I used to crave, I don't crave. Like all that changes. I was thinking about the card that is on the table. That was your birthday card of yours with the sheep. Is it sheep? It's from Sam. Anybody remember what it said? It's kind of like what you think, what you say, what you do is what you become. So that's the thing. We're creating who we become now. And that's important. Like, I would like to be a participant in who I become. And so am I doing the things that create the causes and conditions for the person I want to become? And so often that's not in the decision-making process when we're mindlessly engaged in a day, just doing what we're used to doing and on autopilot. We don't know that we're what we think to do, what we put in this mind, what we watch, what we listen to, what we engage in, what we indulge in mentally, is all what I put into what I become. It's nice to have a choice about that, and remember that, because this mind-body system, that we call a human being, is malleable, and so we're changing, and we can actually be a participant in that, and things become very different. And we can get stuck with what I need, a lot of things I used to need that I don't need anymore. A lot of ideas about myself that I used to have that aren't very accurate today, but might have been accurate then. So we're always in this state of becoming. So this first hindrance, it's probably the biggest one, is just attachment, right? It's the desires to create, it pops up. It's going to be more important than developing my practice. Second one's ill will, and ill will is sort of anger towards others, but also anger towards yourself, right? Self-critical stuff, ill will towards myself. I'm not good enough. You screwed up again, and then third one is, I don't know if I ever pronounced it, torpor. It's, say it? Torpor, yeah. Which is kind of like laxity, dull-mindedness, this way of being that we can get. And I don't know if you ever noticed that, but we can get that like at the end of the day, right? We didn't even maybe do anything that big, but your mind's gone. You're lazy. You know, I don't really feel like doing anything. Um, you want to be entertained. You want some outside stimulant. You know, you just dull. And so that's big. Sloth and torpor, laxity. You know, in other words, you know, it's like in the world we live in, that's pretty common because it's tricky too, like boredom, right? Uh, I noticed even with, you know, I was a monk where monks were traveling, you know, if there wasn't something we were actively doing, prayers or things that we're doing, or, you know, events or programs and nothing to do, we're sleeping, right? It was like bored, you know, sleeping, right? So you can, that's what it's like. It's like I'm not invigorated just sitting in a chair, you know, mine's, I get bored. There's nothing to entertain me. There's nothing to do. So yeah, that's an obstacle. And that's 3, right? 4 is restlessness and worry. I don't think I need to say much on that. Very active mind, worrying about what may happen, worrying about the things I gotta do, that list, you know, that list that's there, and that weight of things that's, you know, on me, you know, that's I'm not getting out from under, that restlessness and worry. And so our mind's activated. And the last one, 5th one's doubt. Yeah, that's a big one. You know, other people can do this, not me. You know, yeah, like, yeah. I mean, here we are talking about people in retreat, you know, maybe a year or two, and I'm sitting here doing 10 minutes, you know, and I'm going, well, don't compare myself to them. They started with 10 minutes, and you know, this doubt. See our progress. Be a good friend to ourselves. Recognize that how far we've come, what we're doing well. You know, so really working with that. So those are the 5 hindrances, and they pop up in our spiritual development or practices. They undermine things. They really bring us into samsara, chasing, you know, something that'll feel good, judging people, you know, that ill will, the uh, the dopamine and the neurotransmitters that are fired up. If they're not fired up, I'm just kind of bored and dull and not much, you know, can't really rouse myself. I'm not that interested. Restlessness and worry so much to, you know, that we have to do in a day now. And what about this? You know, it's popping up. And then doubt, you know, how can I get on Aaron's wish list? I mentioned that last week, the wish list up at CCR. He's got on his chalkboard, wish list, enlightenment in this lifetime. Like, yeah, I want to be on that list. You know, that's a good list. May or may not happen. We don't get caught up, but we, why not be? Why not be? You know, why not? Why not be? You know, we have the same Buddha nature anybody else does. I mean, that's so valuable, remember. And this all comes down to the primary issue of all of samsara, which is a sense of self, a self-centeredness that is fused and identified with the thoughts, feelings, emotions, worries, and fears and sensations of the body and mind. It creates all of this. And with this practice, you could actually recognize you're not all that. You're that which is observing all that. And then there's not much to stress about, because all this is just coming and going and experience, and not who you are anyway. But you don't want to be detached from what is happening. You want to be fully engaged in the human experience and have the joys and challenges. Know that they're all teaching you something. So you don't want to be this detached awareness as though this is just a show, but rather this is a rare and precious life that we get to experience. And I know that there's a deeper awareness that is guiding, observing, and teaching me how to participate in this life fully so I can learn who I really am and help the world. So that's observer participant, which is tricky because we can easily become an observer and become disassociated. Not helpful. Too much of a participant, then I'm fused with everything, caught up. And there's this space of being in the middle there. It's kind of like the introspection, right? Mindful or not mindful, here, not here. But it's always there. The awareness is always there. And awareness is never tired. I mean, that's fascinating to me. My mind gets tired. My body gets tired. My awareness is never tired. Have you ever noticed that? Your awareness never tired. It's always there. It's always there. Not tired. And if we can rest in that awareness, it's, well, not tiring. And so that's one of the shamatha practices is awareness of awareness, where that becomes an object. Very subtle. But you'll notice when you pay attention to just awareness itself, it is vibrant, it is available. You know, you want to be aware of your feet right now, you direct your attention instantly aware of your feet. You want to be aware of something, like the awareness is always there. I'm not attending to it, but it's always there. Dreams, not dreams, like it's always sleep, wake. It's always there, never tired. And that's a gateway into kind of an opportunity to identify a little bit more with our awareness than that which I'm aware of. We want to be aware of what we're aware of, but know that that's not who we are totally. We're also this. We're also this. Did we go in the deep end of the pool yet? So the beautiful thing about where we are in the six perfections, the fifth one, concentration, is achieving karma by achieving shamatha. You would have, that great capacity to not be identified with all those sensations, have direct access to the very nature of the mind itself, without concepts, without, elaboration, pure nature. And you'd be free of all those hindrances. Yeah. But we can make progress every day, and every day have a little more choice. Every day we have a little more opportunity to make choices that shape who we become, instead of being a prisoner of our outside circumstances, people, and other events shaping us. This feels good. That doesn't feel good. I want this because it feels good. This doesn't feel good. No question. Nothing about delayed gratification there. And then mind body just starts learning how to feel good, how to avoid not feeling good, how to avoid being bored. That's not interesting. And so those hindrances kick in, the attachment to the things that feel good, the ill will towards the things that don't, the boredom of not having engagement in something that's getting me activated. The restlessness and the worry that is just prevalent in the world we live in. And then the doubt of our own capacity. Yeah. So those things are, things to look out for. 5 hindrances. Joyous effort is a good antidote to that. All right, we went on for a little bit, but I did get through all 5 after the other 4. Yeah, I think we all need to memorize more lists. Not really. All right, let's go ahead and dedicate the merit and the wisdom that we've already cultivated this evening. Bring up the dedication. There we go. So just taking a moment to be in this moment, maybe bring to mind the preciousness of this moment, the opportunity to unpack some of the skills, time-tested, passed down through centuries, teachings that point to a path of understanding of wisdom, how the world works, how our emotions work, how we experience things, how we can be empowered to have more choice into our lives, to ultimately develop and recognize our own Buddha nature. Pretty rare. So a lot of merit and wisdom has been cultivated here today. Many things we could be doing on a Wednesday night, and we're here opening our hearts, developing our minds, cultivating lives that are virtuous and meaningful and being of benefit to others. So let us dedicate this merit and wisdom for the benefit of all beings. May our efforts find their way into the world, alleviate suffering, creating the conditions for others to find their liberation. May we also dedicate this merit and wisdom for our own continued spiritual growth, that we may ripen the seeds within us and ultimately recognize our own Buddha nature so we can be of greatest benefit to all. And with that context, I invite you, if you'd care to join in the dedication prayer. By this merit may I soon attain the enlightened state of Guru Buddha, that I may be able to liberate all sentient beings from suffering. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore.
Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha.